You need to smile bigger, Emma. You're ruining the aesthetic. My sister Victoria's voice was sharp, cutting through the silence of the pristine, glass-walled lake house. It was Thanksgiving, but it didn't feel like a holiday. It felt like a film set. Victoria had positioned my 8-month-old daughter, Emma, on a white fur rug, trying to force her into a pose for a sponsored social media video. Emma was tired. She was hungry. And when she let out a small, fussy cry, Victoria didn't comfort her. She snapped. With a look of pure irritation, she reached out and aggressively pinched the soft skin of Emma's thigh, then slapped it hard. A sharp, stinging sound echoed in the room. "You spoiled little brat," she hissed. The room went dead silent. My husband Ryan, a fire captain who had spent his life saving people, stood up. He didn't yell, he didn't blink, he just looked at Victoria and said 2 words that changed everything. "Get out." Before we go further, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from right now. I read every single one, and I'd love to know who is standing with us today. Oh, stop being so dramatic. My mother, Patricia's voice fluttered through the room, light and dismissive, as if she were shooing away a fly. She didn't look at Emma. She didn't look at the red mark blooming on my daughter's skin. She looked at Ryan, her expression tight with social embarrassment. "Victoria is just stressed about her engagement metrics," she said. She barely touched her. My father Richard chimed in, carving knife still in hand. "Let's not ruin dinner, everyone." The turkey is getting cold. It was a masterclass in denial. In their world, the appearance of a happy family was more important than the safety of a child. But Ryan wasn't part of their world. He didn't look at them. He kept his eyes locked on Victoria. 10, he said. His voice was low, devoid of anger, terrifyingly calm. It was the voice he used when a building was structurally unsound, and he was ordering his men out. Victoria laughed, a brittle, high-pitched sound. "You can't kick me out," she scoffed. "This is Mom and Dad's house." 9, Ryan said. He took a step forward. He is 6'3", broad-shouldered, a man who breaks down doors for a living. Victoria took a step back. My heart rate didn't even spike. That is the training. When a code blue alarm sounds in the pediatric wing, you don't scream, you assess. I looked down at Emma's leg. The skin was already modeling. I saw the distinct outline of 4 fingers and a thumb, a perfect, angry map of my sister's rage. It wasn't a tap, it was a battery. 8, Ryan said. He pulled his phone from his pocket. 7, I am dialing 911. My father slammed the carving knife onto the platter. "Now see here, Ryan, you are overreacting. We can handle this as a family." 6, Ryan said. 5. Victoria looked at our parents, waiting for them to save her, to tell Ryan to sit down, to restore the hierarchy where she was the queen and I was the audience. But they were frozen by the absolute certainty in my husband's posture. They realized, perhaps for the first time, that their money held no power over him. 4. "Fine," Victoria shrieked. She grabbed her purse from the counter, sweeping a vase of expensive white lilies onto the floor. The glass shattered, water pooling on the hardwood. "I hope you're happy. You ruined the entire aesthetic." "You are so selfish, Ashley. You always have been." She stormed out the front door, slamming it so hard the glass walls of the house vibrated. Silence rushed back into the room, heavy and suffocating. My mother let out a sob. Not for the baby, but for the vase. "Look what you made her do," she whispered. I didn't respond. I picked up my diaper bag. I picked up my daughter. "We're leaving," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, flat, metallic. "Ashley, don't be ridiculous," my father snapped. "Sit down and eat." I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized I felt nothing. No guilt. No obligation. Just the cold calculation of a nurse assessing a hazardous environment. "Ryan," I said, "start the car." We didn't go home. As we pulled out of the driveway, leaving the perfect lake house glowing in the twilight, I turned to Ryan. My hands were steady. "Head to the ER, I said. Not urgent care." "The main hospital?" "Why?" he asked, though I think he already knew. Because urgent care records are easily dismissed, I told him. I need a full pediatric trauma assessment. I need photos. I need a paper trail that no amount of money can erase. Ryan nodded, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. We weren't just parents anymore, we were plaintiffs. And the war had just begun. The emergency room waiting area smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, the red handprint on Emma's leg looked violent, almost obscene against her pale skin. She had finally fallen asleep in my arms, exhausted from crying. Ryan sat beside me, his knee bouncing with a restless, kinetic energy. He was ready to fight a war, but right now, the war was a waiting game. I stared at the triage door, and my mind drifted back to the dinner table. I kept asking myself the same question. Why didn't they move? Why did my parents sit there, forks in hand, watching their granddaughter scream, and do nothing but worry about the mood? And then I remembered my nursing school graduation dinner. We were at a nice steakhouse. The waitress, a young girl, maybe 18 years old, had accidentally spilled a drop of water on the tablecloth near Victoria's purse. It didn't touch the bag, it was just a drop. Victoria had humiliated her. She called the girl incompetent, stupid, and demanded the manager fire her on the spot. The girl left the table in tears. I remember looking at my parents, waiting for them to apologize, to correct Victoria. Instead, my father Richard had chuckled. He took a sip of his wine and said, "Victoria just has high standards. She doesn't suffer fools." My mother had nodded, smiling as if cruelty was a sign of sophistication. That was the trap. For 30 years, I had been conditioned to believe that my sister's abuse was actually a personality quirk called wit. My parents had rebranded her narcissism as excellence and her aggression as passion. They had normalized the cruelty so thoroughly that when she physically assaulted a baby, their brains didn't register a crime. They just registered a disruption to their evening. I had been groomed to be the shock absorber for her rage. But Emma? Emma hadn't signed that contract. "Mrs. Miller?" The voice snapped me back. A doctor in blue scrubs stood in the doorway. Dr. Evans. We followed him into a private exam room. He was kind, soft-spoken, the type of doctor who warmed the stethoscope before touching a patient. But when I unwrapped the blanket from Emma's legs, his face went stone cold. He put on gloves, he measured the bruising, he noted the swelling, he didn't call it a tap, he called it a contusion, he called it non-accidental trauma. "I need to be clear with you," he said, looking from me to Ryan. "As a mandated reporter, I am required to file a report with Child Protective Services. This injury is consistent with a high-velocity strike from an adult hand." I nodded. "Do it," I said. "We want it on record. And we want the police." An officer arrived 20 minutes later, Officer Hayes. He took photos. He took our statements. He wrote down every word Victoria had said. Brat, ruined the aesthetic, barely touched her. Ryan gave him the address of the lake house. When the officer asked if we wanted to press charges, I didn't even look at Ryan. I looked at the bruise on my daughter's leg, a dark purple map of my family's betrayal. "Yes," I said. Walking out of the hospital doors into the cold November night, I felt a strange, hollow lightness. The bridge was burned, the boat was sunk, there was no going back to Sunday dinners or pretending everything was fine. I had handed my family over to the state. I buckled Emma into her car seat, her little chest rising and falling in deep sleep. I was no longer a daughter, I was a fortress, and the drawbridge was coming up. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the rocking chair in Emma's nursery, watching the rise and fall of her chest, waiting for the apology. I checked my phone every 10 minutes. I expected a text from my mother saying, "We're so sorry. Are you okay? Is the baby okay?" I expected my father to call, voice gruff with regret, admitting that things had gone too far. The sun came up. The phone stayed silent. At 8 a.m., my phone finally buzzed. It was my younger brother, Joshua. He was 25, a second-year law student. The only one in the family who saw the world through a lens of liability rather than loyalty. "Ashley," he said. His voice was tight. "Are you sitting down?" "I am," I said. "What happened? Did they call you?" "They didn't call me," Joshua said. "They called a lawyer." My stomach dropped. "What?" "Dad transferred a $6,000 retainer to Bennett and Associates this morning," Joshua told me. "They're criminal defense specialists. Top tier." He paused, and I could hear him pacing on the other end of the line. "They aren't trying to make amends, Ash. They're building a fortress. Dad told the lawyer that you and Ryan are volatile, that you overreacted to a playful interaction, and that they need to get ahead of the narrative before you ruin Victoria's career." $6,000. They hadn't spent 6 minutes checking on their injured granddaughter, but they had dropped $6,000 in less than 12 hours to protect the person who hurt her. The betrayal wasn't a sharp pain anymore. It was a dull, heavy ache, like a bone setting wrong. "They're scared," Joshua continued. "Victoria is freaking out about her sponsors. She's already spinning it. Have you seen Instagram?" I hadn't. I opened the app, my thumb hovering over the icon, and there it was. A black and white photo of Victoria looking pensive, staring out a window, no caption about the baby. Just a vague, cryptic message. Sometimes the people who are supposed to support you the most are the ones who try to dim your light. Protecting my peace from toxic family dynamics this holiday season. The comments were already rolling in. "Stay strong, Queen. Jealousy is a disease. Get well soon. Family can be the worst haters." She was the victim. In her mind, and now in the minds of her 50,000 followers, she was the martyr of a toxic family, not the aggressor who had assaulted an infant. It was a masterclass in Darvo, deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. "Thanks, Josh," I said. My voice was calm. "Keep me posted." I hung up and looked at Ryan. He was standing in the doorway, 2 mugs of coffee in his hands. His eyes were red-rimmed from lack of sleep. "They hired a lawyer," I told him, "and Victoria is playing the victim online." Ryan set the coffee down. He didn't look surprised. He looked resolved. "Good," he said. "That simplifies things." "How does it simplify things?" I asked. "They have money, Ryan. They have resources." "Because now we know who they are," he said. He walked over to the window and looked out at our modest suburban street. "They aren't family anymore, Ashley. They're the opposition. And you don't negotiate with the opposition. You defeat them." I looked down at my phone, at the glowing screen where my sister was receiving sympathy for abusing my child. I felt the last tether of guilt snap. I didn't want their apology anymore. I didn't want their money. I wanted the truth to be the only thing left standing when the dust cleared. I opened my laptop. It was time to organize my own evidence. If they wanted a war, they were going to get one. And I had something they didn't. I had the truth. And I had the receipts. 2 days later, there was a knock at my door. I checked the security camera feed on my phone. It was my mother, Patricia. She was standing on my porch, dressed in a cashmere coat, looking for all the world like a concerned grandmother stopping by for a visit, but she wasn't holding a toy or a casserole. She was holding a manila envelope. I opened the door but left the storm door locked. "Can I help you?" I asked. My voice was polite, distant. "Ashley, open the door," she said. Her tone was brisk, businesslike. "We need to settle this before it gets any more embarrassing." "There's nothing to settle," I said. "You paid for a lawyer to defend the person who assaulted my child. We're done." She stepped closer to the glass. I saw a flash of something in her eyes that I had never seen before. It wasn't the passive, enabling look she usually wore. It was sharp, predatory. "If you don't drop the charges," she said, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper, "I am going to destroy you." The audacity was so sharp it almost drew blood. Destroy me? How? "I know about the PPA, Ashley." The air left my lungs. Postpartum anxiety. After Emma was born, I had struggled. I had obsessive thoughts about her safety. I checked her breathing 10 times a night. I had panic attacks. I had sought help, gone to therapy, taken medication. It was a private medical struggle that I had confided in my mother during a rare moment of vulnerability, thinking she would offer support. Instead, she had filed it away as ammunition. "What about it?" I managed to say. "If this goes to trial," she said, tapping the envelope against the glass, "I will testify. I will tell the court that I saw you shaking Emma. I will tell them that Victoria intervened to stop you, and that's how the baby got hurt. I will say that you are mentally unstable and that this whole police report is a delusion born of your anxiety." I stared at her. The woman who had packed my school lunches, the woman who had bought my wedding dress, she wasn't just an enabler anymore. She was a monster. She was willing to perjure herself, to accuse her own daughter of child abuse, to risk my nursing license and my custody of Emma, just to save face. "You would do that?" I whispered. "You would lie to take my child away?" She didn't blink. "I will do whatever it takes to protect this family. Drop the charges, Ashley. Or I will make sure the state takes Emma away from you for her own safety." Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was the quiet, final sound of a tether breaking. The invisible chain that had bound me to her, the need for her approval, the fear of her disappointment, the hope that she secretly loved me, it was gone. I looked at her, and I didn't see my mother. I saw a threat. "Get off my porch," I said. My voice didn't shake. "You have 24 hours, she hissed. Then she turned and walked back to her Mercedes, heels clicking on the pavement. I locked the door. I walked into the kitchen where Ryan was feeding Emma in her high chair. He looked up, saw my face, and put the spoon down. "What happened?" he asked. "She threatened to blackmail me," I said. "She's going to lie to CPS. She's going to say I hurt Emma." Ryan stood up. His chair scraped violently against the floor. He walked over to me and pulled me into his chest. I could feel his heart hammering against my ear. "They made a mistake," he said. "What mistake?" I asked, burying my face in his shirt. "They threatened a mother," he said. He pulled back and looked me in the eye. "They think you're weak, Ash. They think you're still the little girl who wants them to like her. They don't know who you are now." I looked over at Emma, who was happily smearing sweet potatoes on her tray. My mother wanted to use my mental health struggles, my fight to be a good mother, against me. She wanted to weaponize my love for my child. Ryan was right. They didn't know who I was. They thought they were dealing with a daughter. But they were dealing with a plaintiff who had just been handed the smoking gun. I picked up my phone. I didn't call my mother. I called Joshua. "Josh," I said, "Mom just threatened to perjure herself and file a false CPS report. I need you to tell me exactly how to file for a restraining order, and I want it against both of them." The daughter was dead, the protector was born, and she was going to burn their house down. The threat of blackmail changed everything. Fear evaporated, replaced by a cold, tactical fury. I wasn't just fighting for justice anymore. I was fighting for survival. I called Joshua immediately. "She threatened to call CPS?" Joshua's voice was incredulous. "She actually said she'd lie about the PPA?" "To my face," I confirmed. "She gave me 24 hours to drop the charges or she'd destroy me." "Okay," Joshua said, his tone shifting from brother to legal strategist. "That's extortion. It's witness intimidation. And in the state of Michigan, it's a felony. Did you get it on camera?" "The Ring doorbell," I said. "It records audio. Download it," he ordered. "Save it to 3 different places. Cloud, hard drive, email it to yourself. That footage is your shield." Next, I called Ryan. He was at the fire station, mid-shift. When I told him what my mother had done, there was a long silence on the other end. "I'm coming home," he said. "No," I told him. "Stay at work, talk to your union rep, find out who the best family law attorney in the city is. We aren't just defending ourselves, Ryan. We're going on the offensive." We spent the next 48 hours turning our lives into a fortress. We filed for an emergency protective order not just against Victoria, but against my parents as well, citing the blackmail attempt and the threat to file a false report. We submitted the ring footage as Exhibit A. We hired a security company to install cameras covering every angle of our property, driveway, backyard, side windows. We changed the locks. We alerted Emma's daycare, adding my parents to a strict do not release list and providing photos to the staff. But the most critical piece of evidence came from an unexpected place. I was scrolling through Victoria's old social media posts, looking for anything that established a pattern of aggression when I remembered something. Victoria was obsessed with cloud backups. She synced everything. And 4 years ago, when her laptop crashed, she had given me her login credentials to help her retrieve some files. I had never used them. I sat down at my computer, my heart was pounding, I typed in her old email address, I tried the password she used for everything. Victoria wins 1. Access granted. I navigated to her photo stream. I scrolled back to Thanksgiving. And there it was. A video file in the recently deleted folder, scheduled to be permanently erased in 3 days. She hadn't just deleted the video from her phone, she had tried to scrub it from existence. But the cloud had caught it. I pressed play. The video started mid-scene. Emma was crying. Victoria's face was twisted in a snarl I recognized from childhood. "Smile, you little brat." And then, clear as day, the pinch. The slap. The sound of flesh hitting flesh. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a tap. It was a deliberate, violent act of frustration against a helpless infant. I downloaded the video. I watched it 3 times, letting the anger solidify into something unbreakable. They had money. They had influence. They had the audacity to threaten a mother with her own mental health history. But I had the truth. And now, I had the video. I called our new lawyer, a shark named Elena Rodriguez, whom Ryan's union rep had recommended. "I have something for you," I said. "Is it the blackmail tape?" she asked. "Better," I said. "I have the assault." The shift was complete. The scared daughter who wanted her mother's approval was gone. In her place stood a plaintiff with a smoking gun and a scorched earth policy. I wasn't waiting for a court date anymore. I was ready to bring the gavel down myself. The courtroom smelled like floor wax and anxiety. My parents arrived 10 minutes early, flanked by the expensive defense team Richard had retained. They looked immaculate. My mother wore a navy suit that screamed respectable grandmother, and my father projected the air of a misunderstood philanthropist. Victoria sat between them, dressed in a soft pastel cardigan, dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue. It was a performance. They were treating the legal system like just another social event they could charm their way through. They thought this was about aesthetics. They didn't realize it was about evidence. When the hearing began, their lawyer painted a picture of a hysterical, vindictive sister. He claimed I was weaponizing a minor accident to settle old sibling rivalries. He called my parents loving grandparents who were being unjustly kept from their grandchild. Victoria took the stand and wept. She talked about how much she loved Emma, how she would never hurt a fly, how I had always been jealous of her success. It was a compelling story. For a moment, I saw the judge's expression soften. Then it was our turn. Elena Rodriguez stood up. She didn't make a speech. She didn't use flowery adjectives. She simply walked to the evidence table. "Your Honor," she said, "I would like to submit Exhibit A." She projected the photos from the ER onto the courtroom monitors. The room went quiet. The handprint on Emma's thigh was undeniable, dark, purple, and shaped exactly like a hand. It wasn't a smudge. It was a brand. Exhibit B, Elena continued. She pulled up the transcripts of the text messages and the audio from my Ring doorbell. The courtroom listened to my mother's voice, crisp and clear, threatening to perjure herself. "Drop the charges, or I will tell CPS you are unstable." I saw the judge's jaw tighten. He looked at Patricia, who was suddenly finding the floor very interesting. You threatened to use a mother's confidential medical history to blackmail her into silencing a criminal complaint? The judge asked. His voice was dangerously low. Patricia didn't answer, but we weren't done. And finally, Elena said, "Exhibit C, the video. The one Victoria thought she had deleted. The one the cloud had saved." It played on the big screen. The whining of the baby, the snap of Victoria's wrist, the slap, the way she hissed "brat." The violence was casual, quick, and absolutely deliberate. There was no accidental contact. There was only rage. When the video ended, the silence in the courtroom was absolute. My father's face had drained of all color. Victoria was staring at the table, her hands trembling. The performance was over. The lights were on, and the stage was rotting. The judge didn't need to deliberate. He looked at my family with an expression of pure disgust. In 20 years, on the bench, he said, "I have rarely seen a family so committed to protecting an abuser at the expense of a victim." He turned to my parents. "You funded her defense. You attempted to blackmail the victim. You have demonstrated that you are not grandparents, you are accomplices." He granted a permanent restraining order. 5 years, no contact, 500 yards. He looked at Victoria, and "You," he said, "you are looking at assault charges that are going to stick. I suggest you save your tears for the sentencing hearing." As the gavel banged down, a sharp wooden crack that signaled the end of my old life, I didn't look at them. I looked at Ryan. He squeezed my hand. We stood up, walked past the stunned, silent row of people who share my DNA, and walked out the heavy double doors. The air outside was cold, but for the first time in 30 years, I could breathe. 2 years later, I sat on the porch of a small farmhouse Ryan and I had bought on the outskirts of the city. The air smelled of rain and pine needles, not expensive candles or forced perfection. Inside, I could hear the chaos of a toddler. Emma, now nearly 3, was chasing our golden retriever around the living room, shrieking with laughter. It wasn't aesthetic. It was loud. It was messy. It was perfect. Victoria was still dealing with the fallout. The assault charges had stuck. She pled down to a misdemeanor to avoid jail time, but the conviction killed her influencer career. Brands dropped her overnight. Her perfect life was now a series of court-ordered anger management classes and community service hours. She had lost her platform, her reputation, and her niece. My parents were isolated. They tried to send cards for Emma's birthday, generic Hallmark platitudes about love and family. I returned them all unopened. They had chosen their side. They had chosen the abuser over the child, the image over the truth. And in doing so, they had forfeited the right to know the incredible little girl Emma was becoming. I wasn't just a nurse anymore. After the trial, I had started a local advocacy group called the Cycle Breakers. We helped mothers dealing with family-enabled abuse navigate the legal system. We taught them how to document evidence, how to file protective orders, how to stand up to the pressure to keep the peace. Looking out at the tree line, I realized something profound. My revenge wasn't destroying them, it was building a life they couldn't touch. I hadn't just protected Emma from a slap, I had protected her from a lifetime of normalized cruelty. I had planted a seed of safety in her life, a boundary that taught her she was worth protecting. She would grow up knowing that love doesn't hurt, and that family is defined by behavior, not blood. Ryan walked out onto the porch, handing me a mug of tea. He sat down beside me, his arm heavy and warm around my shoulders. We didn't need to say anything. The silence between us wasn't empty. It was full of peace. If this story resonated with you, please share it. You never know who on your friends list is silently breaking a chain right now and needs to know they aren't crazy. See you in the next one.